Hi kids, it's Mr. Randy. I'm here to tell you today's story. Today's story is an Old Testament story about David and Goliath. Do you know who David was? That's right, he was one of the first kings of Israel. Good job. But before David was king, long before he was king, he was a shepherd that looked after his father's sheep. He was also the youngest of 7 brothers. Are any of you the youngest or have older brothers and sisters? Yeah, sometimes it's tough to be the youngest. Sometimes our older brothers and sisters see us differently than we want to be seen, don't they? Has this ever happened to you? Yeah, I'm sure it has. Well, that is the case with David and his brothers. Sometimes David was seen as too young to be part of important things. But many times, it doesn't matter what's on the outside, it's only what's on the inside that matters. And we'll see this in today's story. David was one of God's people, the Israelites. The Israelites were getting ready to fight an enemy army called the Philistines. David's brothers were soldiers in Israel's army. They were camped with King Saul and other soldiers on a hill, and the Philistines were camped on another hill across the valley. A mighty hero named Goliath was on the Philistine camp. He was from a place called Gath. He was more than 9 feet tall. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore bronze armor that was 125 pounds. On his legs he wore bronze guards, he carried a bronze javelin, and had a huge spear. In fact, if Goliath was in this room, his head would touch the ceiling. Goliath was huge, wasn't he? Well, Goliath stood there and he shouted at the soldiers of Israel. He said, "Why don't you come out here and line up and fight me? I'm a Philistine. You are servants of Saul. Choose one of your men. Have him come down and face me. If he's able to fight and defeat me, we will serve you. But if I defeat him, you will become our slaves and serve us." Goliath continued, "This day I dare the soldiers of Israel to come down and battle with me and fight against me." Saul and the whole army heard what the Philistines said, and they were terrified. Goliath yelled at King Saul and his army for 40 days. King Saul and his men were afraid. They were used to fighting together, not one-on-one, and nobody wanted to fight Goliath by himself. How would you feel if an enemy army wanted to fight you with a huge giant? Would you be afraid? Yes, I would be too. Well, one day David came to camp to bring his brother some food and find out some news about his brothers. David's father Jesse was worried about his sons, and he sent David to make sure they were okay. When David came to the Israelite camp, he heard the giant yelling. This made David very angry what Goliath was saying about God and the Israelites. He couldn't believe what he was saying. And David couldn't believe that no one would fight Goliath. David knew that God was stronger than any giant, and David knew in his heart that God would help the Israelites win. One of the soldiers told King Saul about what David was saying, and King Saul sent for David. And David went and saw the king, and when he saw King Saul, he said, "I will fight Goliath." King Saul says, "You can't do that. You're just a boy." But David answered, "When I was taking care of my father's sheep, I had to kill a lion and I had to kill a bear. And I knew God protected me and helped me defeat the lion and the bear and helped me protect my father's sheep." So Saul agreed to let him fight Goliath. But King Saul liked David and did not want to see him hurt. So he gave him his armor and his sword. He said, "Try these on." And David tried them on and he walked around. He says, "I can't wear these. I can't walk around with these things on. I can't fight. I'm not used to them." So he took the armor off and gave the sword back to the king. So King Saul said, "Go and let the Lord be with you." So David went outside and he found 5 smooth stones, kind of like this. And he went and got his sling. Do you know what a sling is? A sling is 2 pieces of string with a leather patch tied to it. You put the stone in the leather patch and you swing it over your head, and at the right time you let the string go to throw the stone. It's not very easy to do, but that's what David had, and he was ready to go fight Goliath. When Goliath saw David, he was very angry. He thought the biggest and toughest soldier in King Saul's army was coming to fight him. But this was just a boy. He didn't have a spear. He didn't have armor. He didn't have anything. All he had was a sling. So Goliath yelled at him, "Come here and I will kill you." And David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, who you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down. This very day I give the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know there's a God in Israel. And those gathered here will know that it's not by spear or by sword that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. As the giant came closer, David ran towards him. He put the stone in his sling, and he threw it, and he let it go. And he hit Goliath right in the forehead. And Goliath crashed to the ground, and he died right there. When the Philistine army saw what had happened, they were afraid, and they started to run away. King Saul and the army went after them, and they defeated them. David trusted in God to help him, and God used David to help them beat the Philistines. David beat a guy who was much larger and scarier than he was. Why do you think that is? That's right. It's because David put his trust in God. David did not put his trust in his fear or his abilities. David put his trust in God, that God would help him, and God helped David win. Have you ever had a time when you've had a big problem or didn't know what to do? Yes, me too. David had a big problem, but David put his trust that God was bigger than any problem. That is because God cares about us and wants to fight our battles. We may not have to fight a Goliath, but we all have times where we're nervous or scared or do not know what to do. And we can remember that little David and his stones defeated a Goliath because they trusted in God. And we can talk to God anytime and give him our troubles. All we have to do is tell him why we're scared, why we need him, and God will be there and he will listen and he will help us. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's story. Until next time, this is Mr. Randy, and we'll have a good day.